So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here in Pickering, Ontario, and it's the 9th of February, Saturday, and just thought to record a short Dhamma discussion for the internet, and so thought that maybe could start off with just a little bit of meditation. So can start by arching our back a bit, and looking about 3 feet in front, and closing the eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And want to try to make our breathing process as comfortable as possible. So if breathing isn't feeling that comfortable, then can try adjusting it. Can try breathing in long, out short, in short, out long. Can also just pose the question in the mind, what would be a really comfortable way to breathe right now? And then just let one's body respond on its own. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose or the face, then can just let those relax. And can try to make our awareness of the breathing process as continuous as possible. Trying to be aware all the way through the in-breath. As the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath. And as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. And if the mind wanders off to the past or the future, can just bring it back to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, we can just think back over the last 5 minutes or so and can just ask ourselves, what did we try out that worked well? And maybe what did we try out that didn't work so well? And so the next time we sit down to meditate again, can try to do what worked well again and see if we get the same results. And this is one of the ways we can learn about cause and effect in our meditation practice and can learn to develop it as a skill. Okay, so we can open our eyes and do a short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So, hello everybody. Hope that you're having a great day, wherever you may be in the world. And things are coming along here in the Toronto area. We've had some warmer weather the past week, which has been nice. And so I thought to just do a short Dhamma discussion today. And thought to base it, there was a question that actually got asked in the meditation class this week, which was pretty interesting. And that question was, just wrapping up my feet here, keeping them warm. That question was, what should one do if one has done something kind of unintentionally wrong? Kind of somebody do something wrong unintentionally without the intention to do it, and maybe them feel guilty about it. And this is one of the interesting things in the Buddhist teaching is that actually the kind of main thing that makes karma is intention. So if we do something unintentionally, even for monks have many disciplinary rules. And there's no offense for the vast majority of them, most of them, if you do the offense unintentionally. In other words, you weren't aware that you were doing that thing that broke the offense. There's somewhere you still get the offense for that, but most of them, intention is a factor. And so when we do something wrong, I mean, if we have done it unintentionally, then it's really nothing to, not necessarily anything to feel too guilty about. It's kind of, if it was something through carelessness, then, we can think to ourselves, okay, in the future, that's something that I'll try to be more careful in this situation. And kind of, in other words, kind of learn to be pretty forgiving with oneself. Not to the point of not trying to repeat the mistake, but, learning to think of oneself, okay, mistakes are something that everybody's going to make. And if I've made this mistake unintentionally, okay, so now I know this situation has the potential for this mistake. So next time I'm in a similar situation, I won't repeat that. And this can be kind of the case. Somebody's in maybe like a new social situation and, you know, a new group of people, and they weren't expecting somebody to say X to them, and they said X, and they kind of retaliated. So they kind of set up an intention. Okay, you know, if I'm in a new situation with a new group of people, you know, if somebody says something to me that's a little bit mean or whatever, then I'm already setting up my intention. I won't respond to that. In other words, that kind of sets a new direction in one's mind, a new kind of course for one's karma. Actually, the Buddha's teachings on this are really kind of really interesting, because his teaching is basically, if we do something wrong, then you know, you feel enough guilt or sense of shame and fear of wrongdoing not to want to repeat it. But there is this, he doesn't really recommend this feeling of like guilt, like beating oneself up. You know, kind of sometimes there can be this maybe perception that, okay, if I just beat myself up enough, then I'll cause myself enough pain that I won't repeat that action in the future. But what tends to happen when people feel very guilty about something they've maybe done in the past is it actually limits their ability to cultivate wholesome qualities in the present moment. There's something that's called the kind of the taints. I think of the taints of remorse. And kind of, there's what's called the kind, you know, you get these taints from doing bad actions. You also get taints from feeling a lot of remorse about doing that. Which is something kind of interesting, kind of it's a little bit kind of counterintuitive to what we might usually tend to think coming from a usual Western background. But this is a thing, when somebody does something either intentionally or unintentionally that's wrong and then wants to make a change, then it's enough just to have this kind of intention, I'm going to make a change, and then setting that intention in mind. Okay, in the future, I'm not going to do X. You know, so if somebody, you know, broke out in anger over something somebody said, okay, in the future, somebody says the same thing to me, I'm not going to break out in anger. And what that does is it sets a different kind of karmic pathway for a person. Kind of, you know, it's kind of, you know, if somebody just decides that they're not going to do anything about that, or if they just beat themselves up feeling guilty, okay, I haven't really set a new karmic pathway now. I haven't really set a new direction for my future intentions. But once one has set this kind of direction for one's future intentions, then the feeling of guilt becomes an obstacle to achieving those future intentions. Kind of, it can become an obstacle to cultivating wholesome states right now. It's actually sometimes the case in the West that people sometimes feel so guilty that their guilt is almost crippling, and then their friends, their family, all become worried about them. So actually, this feeling of guilt can generate more bad karma. Kind of, can generate more negative things, especially if somebody feels guilty to the extent they try to punish or hurt themselves. It's actually, you know, a person trying to hurt oneself, that's actually bad karma too. You know, maybe even worse karma than trying to hurt somebody else. If somebody tries to hurt somebody else, then that person will usually defend themselves. But if one tries to hurt oneself, then it's very difficult for any, you know, maybe somebody's friends and family will try to stop that, but very difficult to defend against that. One's trying to hurt oneself. One needs to be one's own protector. And this doesn't just mean like, you know, very terrible overt cases of hurting oneself, but hurting oneself with building up negative self-perception. So I'm a terrible person, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, you know, basically building up this negative self-identity. You know, which kind of creates bad karma. And kind of having this negative, weighed down self-identity makes it difficult for a person to cultivate good. So then what the Buddha's instructions are is that once we've set a new resolution, okay, look, I did that wrong, whatever it was. In the future, I'm not going to do that wrong. I'm going to do this instead. Then once one set that intention, any feeling of guilt that comes up around that, one's to let it go. Bring one's mind back to what one's doing right now. This is where the kind of teachings of meditation come in really handy. It's kind of like that movie, The Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi is like, okay, he was getting Daniel to wax his car. He's doing all this car waxing. And Daniel went and complained. He's like, why am I doing all this waxing? And then, you know, Mr. Miyagi said, okay, I'm going to, you know, he threw a punch and he said, okay, do wax on. And so he did, you know, wax on, and he, you know, it ended up being a block. And he did wax off, it's another block with the other hand. And so in the same way, you know, when one keeps practicing meditation in this way, these various negative mind states that come up, when one directs one's mind away from them, that's what we've been practicing when we sit down to watch our breath. Just keep bringing our mind back to it. So with these skills we develop from meditation, when our mind runs off to guilt, even though we've set a positive intention for the future, we learn to bring it back to a more wholesome object of mind, thinking, okay, look, this guilt isn't going to go anywhere. I'm not going to pay any attention to it. I'm going to focus in on doing what's wholesome, what's beneficial right now. And the Buddha says in this way, this is how bad actions are actually overcome. They're not overcome through going and beating oneself up about it, whatever. All these actions have a karmic potential that eventually ripens, and they ripen faster and they ripen less if we do good deeds. So if one kind of beats oneself up, gets down, hard to do good deeds. If one starts doing good deeds, keeps doing good deeds, whatever bad potential is going to come from that action, it ripens sooner. And it sometimes ripens in a way that people barely feel. So all the time, the emphasis, regardless on whatever mistakes a person has made, is to continue cultivating wholesome qualities. So most Buddhists know this kind of story of somebody became an arahant, somebody who's ended suffering in the Buddha's time. And his name was Angulimala. He was actually a serial killer. He kind of would murder people and cut their fingers off and wear their fingers as a necklace. And the Buddha actually saw that he had some potential to move forward, and the king was about to go and try to rout him out with his army. And the Buddha ended up going there first and was able to convert him. So he became a monk, gave up his his serial killing, and eventually reached the highest goal, which was arahantship. So basically, this was somebody who'd done a lot of terrible things intentionally, and eventually was able to let go, was able to move forward in cultivating wholesome qualities. And so this is something that can all keep in mind, because almost nobody has intentionally murdered people or serial murdered people to the extent of Angulimala. He was said to have murdered a lot of people, almost 1,000. And so if we haven't done that, then there's always a potential to turn around. And this is the kind of thing in the Buddha's teachings, is that this potential is something to focus on. Whatever negative deed we've done, let's not repeat it in the future. Let's go forward in the future doing wholesome things. Whatever sense of guilt comes up again about a negative deed, let's let that go and move forward in the cultivation of wholesome qualities. So this is why in the Dhammapada it says kind of a person who formerly did evil, but now is kind of turning to good. I'm usually not the best paraphraser, but they're like a kind of the moon, like a full moon coming out from behind a cloud. In other words, they're radiant even then. Okay? Come out from these unwholesome qualities into wholesome ones, and a person becomes radiant. So in other words, whatever negative action one has done, it's not a result of some inner being, inner sense of self, inner true nature that's really bad or really horrible. It was an unskillful action, but skillful ones can replace it, so long as one practices those. So having this idea of practicing in wholesome qualities, moving forward in wholesome qualities, one learns to let go of any feelings of guilt for what one's done in the past. And moving forward in wholesome qualities in this way, whatever bad results come from those actions, they ripen sooner. And in this way, this deed is paid off. Whatever negative karmic debt one has gets paid off, and the positive karmic forces from one's wholesome actions, they grow and they ripen. And they ripen in ways that benefit oneself, benefit others, benefit everybody around. And so in this way, whatever bad one did, that can get turned into good. This good can make one's own life good, make the lives of people around one good, and make one's mind happy. So those are some of understandings on the Buddha's teachings on overcoming negative actions that one has done in the past. And so I hope that everybody has a great day, and wishing you all the best till next time.